The blood on Katherine Ashford's lips tasted like copper and shame as she gripped the wooden railing of the mercantile, her left leg dragging behind her like a broken promise. Summer heat shimmered off the dusty streets of Jerome Junction, Arizona, in waves that made the buildings dance. But she felt cold inside, the kind of cold that settled into bones after a brutal winter and refused to leave even under the merciless July sun of 1883. She had survived the fall down those stairs last December, when her husband Harold shoved her during one of his drunken rages, but her hip had never healed right, leaving her with a limp that marked her as damaged goods in a town where women were already scarce and precious. Now she was trying to gather supplies before Harold woke from his afternoon stupor, moving as quickly as her broken body would allow through the crowded afternoon streets, praying nobody would ask questions she could not afford to answer. She made it 3 more steps before her leg gave out completely, sending her crashing against a hitching post, with a cry she tried to muffle behind her hand. The packages she had been carrying scattered across the wooden boardwalk, potatoes rolling into the dirt street, flour dusting the air like snow. "Madam, you hurt yourself there?" The voice came from somewhere above her, deep and concerned, carrying an accent that marked him as someone from further east, maybe Texas or Oklahoma territory. Katherine looked up through tears she refused to let fall, squinting against the bright sun to see a man dismounting from a paint horse with practiced ease. He was tall, maybe 30 years old, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of creek water after a storm. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy, dusty leather chaps over worn denim, a blue shirt faded from countless washings, and a hat that had seen better days. But it was his face that caught her attention, open and honest in a way that made her chest ache with something she had almost forgotten existed. "I am fine," she said, trying to push herself up and failing, her leg refusing to cooperate. "Please, I just need to gather my things and go home." The cowboy was already crouching beside her, his hands hovering near her arms but not touching, respecting her space in a way Harold never had. "You are not fine, madam. You are hurt. Let me help you up at least. I promise I am a gentleman. Name is Preston Cole, and I just hired on with the ranch outside town." Something in his voice made her trust him. Or maybe she was just so tired of fighting everything alone. She nodded, and his hands, calloused but gentle, helped her to her feet. The moment she put weight on her left leg, it buckled again, and he caught her easily, steadying her against the hitching post. "Easy now," he said softly. "That leg is not right. How long have you been limping like this?" Katherine felt her throat close up, the kindness in his question undoing her in a way Harold's cruelty never could. "It is nothing," she managed, but her voice shook. "I fell last winter, and it never healed proper. I just need to get home." Preston's green eyes searched her face, and she saw the moment he noticed the fading yellow bruise along her jaw that she had tried to cover with powder. His expression hardened, jaw tightening, but when he spoke, his voice remained gentle. "That was some fall. Must have been a bad one to leave you limping half a year later." She could not meet his eyes. "The stairs were icy." "I see." The way he said it made clear he saw far more than she wanted him to. "Well, let me gather your things here, and then I will walk you home. No arguing now. A lady should not be struggling alone when there is help to be had." Before she could protest, he was collecting her scattered purchases, moving with the efficient grace of someone used to physical work. He even retrieved the potatoes from the street, dusting them off before placing them back in her basket. When he offered her his arm, she hesitated only a moment before taking it, grateful for the support, even as shame burned through her at needing it. They walked slowly through Jerome Junction's main street, past the saloon where Harold spent most of his time, past the bank where he worked as a clerk when he bothered to show up, past the church where she had married him 4 years ago, full of hope and stupid dreams. Preston matched his pace to hers without complaint, his presence solid and reassuring beside her. "I am Katherine," she said quietly, because he had given her his name, and it seemed rude not to reciprocate. "Katherine Ashford." "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Ashford, though I wish it were under better circumstances." He adjusted the basket on his other arm. "You live far from town?" "Just at the end of this street." "The small house with the green shutters?" She could see it now, and her stomach knotted with anxiety. What if Harold was awake? What if he saw her with another man? But she could not send Preston away when he had been nothing but kind. Green shutters, pretty place. Preston's voice remained conversational, easy. I just got into town yesterday. Been working cattle drives the last few years. But I am looking to settle down some. The Rocking M Ranch needs experienced hands and the pay is decent. Katherine found herself relaxing slightly as he talked, his calm demeanor soothing her frayed nerves. The Rocking M is a good outfit. The owner, Mr. Morrison, treats his people fair. That is what I heard. Been on the trail too long, eating dust and sleeping on hard ground. Time to see if I can make a proper life somewhere. He glanced at her, and something in his expression made her heart skip. A man gets tired of being alone. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. Her hip throbbed with each step, a deep ache that radiated down to her knee and up into her lower back. The doctor had told her last winter that the bone had not set right, that she would probably limp for the rest of her life, and Harold had raged at her for being clumsy, for embarrassing him, for costing him money and medical bills. They reached her small house, and Katherine felt relief war with dread in her chest. The windows were still dark, which meant Harold had not woken yet. She had maybe another hour before he would be demanding his dinner and looking for reasons to criticize her. "Thank you, Mr. Cole," she said, taking the basket from him. "You have been very kind." Preston tipped his hat, but did not immediately leave. His eyes swept over the house, taking in details she had stopped seeing years ago, the peeling paint, the sagging porch, the shutters that needed repair. "Mrs. Ashford, I hope you do not mind me speaking plain, but that leg needs looking at by a proper doctor. The way you are favoring it, you have got damage that could get worse if not treated right." "I have seen a doctor," she said quietly. "There is nothing more to be done." "Maybe." He held her gaze. "But sometimes a second opinion helps. My aunt back in Austin was told the same thing about her leg, and a different doctor fixed her right up. I am not trying to overstep, madam, just concerned." Tears pricked at Katherine's eyes again, and she blinked them back fiercely. When was the last time someone had shown genuine concern for her well-being? When had Harold last cared about anything beyond his own comfort? "I appreciate your concern truly," she managed, "but my husband handles our medical affairs." Something flickered in Preston's expression, there and gone too quickly to name. "Of course. Well, if you ever need anything, Mrs. Ashford, I will be at the Rocking M, easy enough to find, and I come into town most Saturday afternoons for supplies." He tipped his hat again and turned to leave, and Katherine watched him go, something twisting in her chest that felt dangerously like hope. She forced herself to turn away, to carry her supplies into the dim interior of her house, to begin preparing dinner before Harold woke. But that night, as she lay beside her snoring husband, her hip aching and her heart heavy, she thought about green eyes full of kindness and wondered what her life might have been like if she had met Preston Cole 4 years ago instead of Harold Ashford. The weeks that followed settled into a strange new pattern. Katherine went about her usual routine, cooking and cleaning and trying to stay out of Harold's way when he was drinking, which was most of the time. But now, when she limped to town for supplies every few days, she found herself looking for a paint horse tied outside the mercantile or the feed store. More often than not, she spotted Preston somewhere on the street, and he always tipped his hat, always asked how she was doing, always offered to carry her packages. At first, she tried to refuse his help, painfully aware of how it looked, a married woman accepting assistance from a single man. But Preston was relentless in his gentle way, simply taking her basket before she could protest, walking beside her with that easy smile that made her feel like maybe she was not completely invisible after all. "You know people will talk," she said one Saturday afternoon in August as they walked together toward her house, the heat baking the earth hard as brick. "Let them talk." Preston shifted the basket to his other arm. "I am helping a lady who needs help. Anyone who sees something wrong in that has the problem, not us. You do not understand. This town, they already think I am strange because I keep to myself. And Harold, he is very jealous. If he thought I was being improper with another man." She trailed off, but Preston's expression had gone hard again. "He would what, Mrs. Ashford? Push you down the stairs again?" Katherine stopped walking, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I never said he pushed me." "You did not have to." Preston's voice was quiet, controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. "I have seen enough in my life to recognize certain signs. The way you flinch when someone moves too quick. How you make yourself small, like you were trying not to be noticed. That bruise on your jaw the day I met you, and that new one on your wrist you were trying to hide with your sleeve. She looked down at her arm. At the sleeve she had pulled low specifically to cover the finger-shaped bruises Harold had left 3 days ago when she had not gotten his breakfast ready fast enough. Shame washed over her, hot and suffocating. "It is not your concern," she whispered. "Maybe it should be someone's concern." Preston set the basket down and faced her fully, his expression fierce, but his voice still gentle. "Katherine, you do not deserve to be treated that way. No one does." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it made her breath catch. "You do not know what you are saying. Marriage is sacred. A wife stays with her husband. Even when that husband hurts her? Even when he breaks her bones and leaves her limping?" Preston shook his head. "That is not marriage, Katherine. That is imprisonment." "Stop!" She held up a hand, tears streaming down her face now, despite her best efforts. "Please stop. You are making this harder. I have nowhere to go. No money of my own, no family to take me in. This is my life. I have accepted it." "I have not accepted it." Preston's jaw set in a stubborn line. "And I do not think you have either, not really. I see the way you look sometimes, like you are trapped in a cage and cannot remember what freedom feels like." Katherine wiped at her tears with shaking hands. "What would you have me do? Leave him? A divorced woman has no place in society. I would be ruined, unemployable, alone. You would be free." Preston took a step closer, then seemed to think better of it, and stopped. "And you would not be alone. I would help you." Her heart stuttered in her chest. "Why? Why would you risk yourself for me? You barely know me." "I know enough." His green eyes held hers with an intensity that made her feel naked, seen in a way she had not been in years. "I know you are kind, because you always have a smile for the children on the street, even when I can see you are in pain. I know you are strong, because you keep going day after day, even though everything in you probably wants to give up. And I know you deserve better than what you have got." "Preston, I cannot." But even as she said it, something in her chest cracked open, letting in a sliver of dangerous light. "It is impossible. Nothing is impossible." He picked up her basket again. "Just think about it. That is all I ask. Think about what your life could be, instead of what it is." They walked the rest of the way to her house in silence, but Katherine's mind was racing. What he was suggesting was madness, complete and utter madness. Women did not just leave their husbands, especially not in small towns like Jerome Junction, where everyone knew everyone else's business. She would be ostracized, condemned, treated as a fallen woman. But as she watched Preston tip his hat and ride away on his paint horse, she let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it might feel like to wake up without fear, to go through a day without wondering when the next blow would fall, to maybe even be loved by someone who looked at her the way Preston Cole did. That night, Harold came home drunker than usual, his face flushed and his eyes mean. Katherine had dinner waiting, but he took one look at the stew she had made and knocked the bowl off the table, sending it crashing to the floor. "This is what you give me?" he snarled. "Slop fit for pigs? I work all day while you sit around doing nothing, and this is how you repay me?" "I am sorry," Katherine said automatically, already moving to clean up the mess. "I will make you something else." "You are damn right you will." Harold grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave new bruises. "And maybe this time you will put some effort into it instead of daydreaming about whatever goes through that empty head of yours." He shoved her toward the kitchen, and she stumbled, her bad leg nearly giving out. She caught herself on the counter, her hips screaming in protest, and forced herself to start preparing another meal. Behind her, Harold slumped into his chair, muttering about ungrateful wives and how he should have married someone prettier, younger, more useful. Katherine's hands shook as she sliced bread and ham, assembled a cold plate since she did not trust herself near the stove right now. But in her mind, she heard Preston's voice saying, "You deserve better than what you have got." And for the first time in 4 years, she let herself believe it might be true. September came to Jerome Junction with cooler nights and the promise of fall somewhere on the horizon. Katherine's encounters with Preston had become both the highlight of her weeks and a source of growing anxiety. He never pressed her about leaving Harold again, but his presence was a constant reminder that there were men in the world who could be gentle, who could be kind, who saw her as more than just a possession to be used and discarded. She found herself thinking about him at odd hours, remembering the way he smiled when he saw her, the careful way he helped her navigate the uneven boardwalks, the sound of his laugh when she said something that amused him. It was wrong, she knew, to think about another man when she was married, but she could not seem to stop herself. One Saturday in late September, she was leaving the general store when she saw Preston coming out of the bank across the street. Their eyes met, and he smiled that warm smile that made her feel like sunshine was breaking through clouds. He started to cross the street toward her, but then someone else emerged from the bank behind him, and Catherine's blood turned to ice. Harold looked between her and Preston with narrowed eyes, his face already flushing with anger. She watched him process the scene, watched suspicion bloom into rage, and knew with sick certainty that she was going to pay for this later. "Katherine," Harold said loudly, crossing the street with quick strides. "Who is your friend?" "Mr. Cole works at the Rocking M," she said quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. "He has been kind enough to help me with packages sometimes, given my leg." "How considerate." Harold's voice dripped with false pleasantness as he sized up Preston, who stood a good 3 inches taller and had the lean, hard build of someone who worked physically demanding jobs. Harold Ashford, Catherine's husband. Preston Cole. Preston's voice was cool, professional, but Katherine saw the tension in his shoulders. "Your wife mentioned you. I was just being neighborly, helping her out when she needs it." "I am sure you were." Harold wrapped an arm around Catherine's shoulders, his fingers digging into her collarbone hard enough to make her wince. "But I can help my own wife, thank you. No need for you to trouble yourself anymore." The two men stared at each other for a long moment, and Katherine held her breath, terrified they might actually come to blows right there in the middle of town. But Preston finally nodded, tipping his hat to her. "Mrs. Ashford, I hope your day improves. Ashford, nice to meet you." He walked away, and Katherine wanted to call him back, wanted to run after him, wanted anything except to go home with Harold and face whatever was coming. But she had no choice. Harold steered her down the street toward their house, his grip on her shoulder bruising, his silence more terrifying than any words. They made it inside before he exploded. "How long has this been going on?" "Nothing is going on," Katherine said, backing away from him. "Harold, please, he is just a kind man who helps me carry things. My leg makes it hard to manage sometimes." "Your leg?" Harold's laugh was ugly. "Maybe if you were not so clumsy, falling downstairs and making yourself into a cripple, you would not need some cowboy sniffing around you like a dog in heat." "It was not my fault I fell," Katherine said, and then immediately regretted it as Harold's face went purple with rage. "Not your fault? Not your fault?" He advanced on her, and she retreated until her back hit the wall. "I barely touched you, and you went tumbling down like you were made of straw. And now you are making me look like a fool in front of the whole town, letting some ranch hand carry your packages like I cannot provide for you." "Harold, nothing happened, I swear it." But he was beyond hearing her now, beyond reason. His hand cracked across her face once, twice, and then he was shoving her backwards. Catherine's bad leg gave out, and she crashed to the floor, her hip exploding with pain so intense she nearly vomited. "You are my wife," Harold spat down at her. "Mine. And if I see you with that cowboy again, I will make you regret it. Do you understand me?" Katherine nodded, unable to speak through her tears and the pain radiating from her hip. Harold stared at her for another moment, then grabbed his hat and stormed out, probably heading to the saloon. She heard the door slam, heard his footsteps fade, and then she was alone with her pain and her shame and the terrible knowledge that this was her life. This would always be her life, unless she found the courage to change it. She did not know how long she lay there on the floor before she managed to drag herself upright. Her face throbbed where Harold had struck her, and her hip felt like it was on fire. But worse than the physical pain was the despair that threatened to swallow her whole. Preston had been right. This was not marriage. This was imprisonment. And she had to find a way out before Harold killed her, because she was increasingly certain that was where this was heading. The violence was escalating, each incident worse than the last, and one day he was going to push her down the stairs or beat her, or hurt her in some way she could not recover from. She made it to the kitchen, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection in the small mirror hanging by the door. A stranger looked back at her, hollow-eyed and haunted, with bruises blooming across her cheekbone. This was not who she was supposed to be. She had married Harold believing in love and partnership and building a life together. How had it all gone so wrong? The answer, she realized, was that she had ignored the warning signs. The way he drank too much even when they were courting, how he had a temper he did not always control, the subtle ways he had started isolating her from her friends, making her feel like she was lucky he had chosen her, like she did not deserve better. She had been 20 years old and naive, and now she was 24 and broken, and if she did not do something soon, she would end up dead in this miserable little house while the whole town whispered about what a shame it was, but did nothing to help. Katherine made a decision then, standing in her kitchen with her face swelling and her hips screaming. She was going to leave. She did not know how yet, did not know where she would go or what she would do, but she was done being Harold Ashford's punching bag. And somehow, Preston Cole was going to help her, even if he did not know it yet. 2 weeks passed before Katherine could go into town again. Harold had been watching her like a hawk, making sure she stayed home, except for church on Sunday, where she wore a high-neck dress and a bonnet that shaded her face. She kept her head down and spoke to no one, painfully aware of Harold's hand on her elbow, possessive and threatening. But Harold could not keep her prisoner forever. They needed supplies, and he certainly was not going to do the shopping himself. So, on a Tuesday afternoon in early October, he finally let her go to town, though not before warning her that if he heard she had spoken to that cowboy, there would be consequences. Katherine walked as quickly as her leg would allow, knowing she had maybe 2 hours before Harold would come checking on her. She gathered her supplies efficiently, paid for them, and then made her way to the feed store on the edge of town, where ranch hands often stopped for equipment and tack. Her heart sank when Preston's paint horse was not tied up outside. She lingered for a few minutes, pretending to look at a display of garden tools, until the proprietor asked if she needed help, and she had to admit defeat. She was walking back toward the main street when she heard hoofbeats behind her. She turned, and there was Preston, riding in from the direction of the rocking M, his face lighting up when he saw her before concern took over. "Katherine!" He dismounted quickly, leading his horse as he approached her. "My God, what happened to your face?" She had tried to cover the worst of the bruising with powder, but clearly it had not worked. "I am fine. I just need to talk to you, but not here. Can you meet me somewhere private?" Preston's expression went from concerned to determined. "The old line shack on the north edge of town, past the cemetery. Nobody uses it anymore. Can you make it there?" Katherine nodded, her heart hammering. "Give me 10 minutes. I cannot be seen with you again." "I understand." His hand twitched like he wanted to reach for her, but knew better. "I will be waiting." The walk to the line shack made her hips scream with protest, but Katherine pushed through the pain. This was too important to let physical discomfort stop her. She found the small, weathered building easily enough, and Preston was already there, pacing anxiously in front of it. "You get inside, quickly," he said, ushering her into the dim interior. The shack was dusty and clearly abandoned, with a broken cot in one corner and a table missing half its legs, but it was private, which was all that mattered. Preston turned to face her, and in the strips of light coming through gaps in the walls, she saw fury and anguish warring on his face. "He did this to you, because of me. He did this to me because he is a violent man who sees me as property," Katherine corrected quietly. "You were just an excuse. If it had not been you, it would have been something else. It always is." "How long has this been going on?" "Since a few months after we married. It started small, harsh words, little cruelties. Then he pushed me during an argument. After that, it got worse." "And the stairs last winter?" Katherine met his eyes. "He shoved me down them because I had forgotten to pick up his shirts from the laundress. I broke my hip in 2 places. The doctor said I was lucky I did not break my neck." Preston turned away from her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I want to kill him. I know that is wrong. I know violence is not the answer. But God help me, Katherine. I want to make him pay for what he has done to you. I do not want you to kill him. I want you to help me leave him." He turned back to her so quickly he almost stumbled. "What?" "I have been thinking about what you said, about deserving better, about being free. You were right. I cannot live like this anymore. But I cannot leave without help. I have no money, no family, nowhere to go. Harold controls everything." Preston crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, stopping just short of touching her. "I will help you. Whatever you need, however I can. Just tell me what to do. Relief flooded through Katherine so powerfully her knees went weak. I need money for a train ticket, and I need someone to make sure Harold does not come after me once I am gone. Where will you go? I have a cousin in California, in San Francisco. We exchanged letters when I first got married, but Harold made me stop. But she told me once that if I ever needed anything, her door was open. I am going to take her up on that offer. Preston nodded slowly, his mind clearly working through the logistics. California. That is far enough he would have trouble finding you, especially if he does not know exactly where to look. How much do you need? I have been saving what I can from the household money, but it is not much. Maybe $20. The train ticket will be around $50, I think, and I will need a little extra to get established once I arrive. I have savings, Preston said immediately. Been putting away money for years now, planning to buy my own ranch someday. Consider it yours. Preston? I cannot take your dream from you. You are not taking anything. I am giving it freely. He finally reached out, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Katherine, I meant what I said before. I know we have not known each other long, but I care about you, more than care about you if I am being honest, and I cannot stand by and do nothing while you are being hurt. Katherine felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Why? Why do you care so much? Because from the moment I saw you struggling outside the mercantile, trying so hard to be strong even though you were in pain, something in me recognized something in you, like calling to like. And every time I have talked to you since, every smile you have given me, every moment of your company has made me more certain that you are someone special, someone worth protecting, someone worth loving. The last word hung between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. Katherine knew she should not, knew it was wrong when she was still married, but she could not stop herself from leaning into him, letting him wrap his arms around her carefully, mindful of her injuries. I care about you too, she whispered against his shoulder, more than I should, more than is proper. There is nothing improper about caring for someone. Preston's voice was low, his breath warm against her hair. And once you are free of him, once you are safe, maybe we can figure out what this is between us. If you want to, that is. I want to. Katherine pulled back enough to look up at him. But first, I have to get away from Harold, and that will not be easy. Then let's make a plan. Preston released her reluctantly and began to pace, his mind clearly working through possibilities. When can you leave? Saturday. Harold always goes to the saloon Saturday afternoons and stays until late at night. If I leave then, I will have hours before he realizes I am gone. There is a train that comes through at 4 in the afternoon, heading west. If I can be on that train, I will have enough of a head start that he cannot catch me. Saturday, Preston nodded. 3 days, I will get you the money by then, and I will make sure you get on that train safely. Where should we meet? The station. I will tell Harold I am going to visit Mrs. Henderson, the minister's wife. She lives on the other side of town, so it will not seem strange if I am gone for a few hours. I will take a small bag with just essentials, nothing that will make him suspicious if he sees me leave. And once you are on the train? Once I'm on the train, I will send you a telegram when I reach California safely. After that, Katherine's voice trailed off. After that was a vast unknown, terrifying, and thrilling in equal measure. After that, we will see where life takes us, Preston finished softly. Maybe once you are settled and have had time to heal, I could come visit, see how you are doing, court you properly, if you would allow it. The idea of being courted by Preston Cole, of having the chance to fall in love without fear, made Katherine's heart soar in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. I would like that very much. They talked for another few minutes, working out the details, before Katherine reluctantly said she had to go before Harold came looking for her. Preston walked her back to the edge of town, careful to stay out of sight. And the look he gave her before they parted ways held so much promise that she carried it with her like a talisman as she limped home. 3 days? She just had to survive 3 more days, and then she would be free. Thursday night, Harold came home in a fury. Katherine was setting the table for dinner when he slammed through the door, his face red and his hands shaking with rage. "They let me go," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The bank let me go, said my work was not up to standard, that I missed too many days, as if a man cannot have a drink now and then without being persecuted for it." Catherine's stomach dropped. Harold without a job meant Harold home all day, drinking and looking for targets for his anger. I am sure you will find something else soon. You are very qualified. Very qualified. He laughed bitterly, crossing to the cabinet where he kept his whiskey. Fat lot of good that does me in this backwards town. I should never have agreed to come here. Should have stayed in Denver, where there were real opportunities. He had been saying variations of the same thing for 4 years, blaming the town, blaming Katherine, blaming everyone but himself for his failures. She watched him pour a large glass of whiskey and down it in 3 swallows, her mind racing. If Harold was home on Saturday, her plan would not work. She would not be able to leave without him knowing immediately, unless she found a way to make sure he was not home. But how? Friday morning, Katherine woke with an idea. It was risky, maybe even dangerous, but it was the only option she could see. She waited until Harold had finished his breakfast and was staring morosely into his coffee cup before she spoke. Harold, I heard Mrs. Henderson mention that her husband needs help organizing the church records. He is willing to pay a few dollars for a day's work if you are interested. I could ask her about it for you. Harold looked up, suspicion and interest warring on his face. The minister wants to pay me to do paperwork? It is not much money, but it would be something until you find a proper position. And Reverend Henderson is well connected. If he puts in a good word for you, it might help with the bank in Prescott or some of the other businesses. She held her breath, praying he would take the bait. Harold was prideful enough to hate the idea of working for a minister, but desperate enough that even a few dollars sounded good right now. And the possibility of connections, of someone influential speaking on his behalf, would appeal to his ego. I suppose it would not hurt to talk to him, Harold said finally. You will arrange it? Of course. I will go see Mrs. Henderson this afternoon and ask about it. Katherine did go see Mrs. Henderson, a kindly woman in her 50s who had always treated her gently. She explained that her husband was out of work and looking for any temporary positions, and could the Reverend perhaps use some help. Mrs. Henderson, bless her, did not ask questions, just said she would speak to her husband and that Harold should come by the church Saturday afternoon around 2. When Katherine told Harold that evening, she saw the calculation in his eyes. Saturday afternoon at the church meant he could still go to the saloon afterward, could probably stretch the day into getting some free sympathy drinks from his friends about his run of bad luck. He agreed readily, and Katherine felt a surge of triumph. It was working. Her plan was actually working. Saturday morning dawned clear and cool, the kind of October day that made Arizona briefly bearable. Katherine went about her morning routine as normally as possible, preparing Harold's breakfast, tidying the house, giving no indication that in a few hours she was going to walk out of this place and never come back. She had hidden her small bag behind the woodpile 2 days ago, packed with 2 changes of clothes, her mother's Bible, and the little bit of money she had managed to save. She had nothing else worth taking. All the furniture belonged to Harold, all the dishes and linens. She was leaving with almost nothing, but she did not care. Things could be replaced. Her life could not. Harold left for the church at 1:30, grumbling about wasting his Saturday, but clearly hopeful the Reverend would prove useful. Katherine watched him go, counted to 100, and then moved with more speed than her hip had allowed in months. She retrieved her bag, changed into her best dress, the navy blue one that did not scream, running away, and pinned her hat carefully over her hair. She looked around the little house one last time, feeling nothing except relief that she would never have to see these walls again. And then she walked out the door without looking back. The train station was a 15-minute walk from her house, and every step felt like victory and terror combined. What if Harold came home early? What if someone saw her and told him? What if Preston had not been able to get the money? What if this was all a terrible mistake, and she ended up alone and destitute with nowhere to go? But when she reached the station, Preston was there, leaning against the wall near the ticket office, and the smile that broke across his face when he saw her made every fear worth facing. "You came," he said, straightening up. "Did you think I would not?" "I was not sure. It would not have blamed you if you had changed your mind. This is a big step. The biggest of my life." Katherine glanced around nervously, but the platform was mostly empty, just a few other travelers waiting for the westbound train. "Did you—" "I have the money." Preston pulled an envelope from his jacket. $75, enough for your ticket and some extra to get you started. Katherine took the envelope with shaking hands, overwhelmed by his generosity. "Preston, I will pay you back. I swear it. Once I get settled and find work, I will send you every penny. I do not want you to pay me back." He moved closer, his voice dropping low. "I want you to be safe and happy and free. That is payment enough." She wanted to throw her arms around him, wanted to kiss him right there on the platform in front of God and everyone, but she settled for squeezing his hand briefly. "Thank you. For everything, for seeing me, for believing I deserved better." "You do deserve better. You deserve the world." Preston's green eyes held hers, intense and sincere. "And one day, if you will have me, I would like to be the one to give it to you." The train whistle sounded in the distance, and Katherine's heart jumped into her throat. "I should buy my ticket." "I already did." Preston pulled a ticket from his pocket. "Train to California, with connections through Yuma and Los Angeles to San Francisco. You are traveling as Katherine Andrews. I figured using your maiden name might be safer." Katherine took the ticket, her eyes filling with tears. "You thought of everything." "I tried. I also—" He pulled out another piece of paper. "I wrote down the address of the Rocking M and the name of the telegraph office in town. Send me word when you arrive safely, and then whenever you are ready to hear from me, I will be waiting." The train was pulling into the station now, brakes squealing, steam hissing. Other passengers were gathering their belongings, preparing to board. Katherine knew she had only moments left. "Preston Cole, you are the best man I have ever known," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And when I get to California, when I have started building my new life, I am going to send for you, because whatever this is between us, I want to see where it goes." "I will come the moment you call," Preston promised. "Now get on that train before I do something stupid like beg you to stay." Katherine picked up her bag, took one last look at the man who had saved her in more ways than one, and boarded the train. She found a seat by the window and watched as Preston stood on the platform, his hat in his hands, until the train pulled away and he disappeared from view. As the landscape began to roll past, the copper mines and rough terrain of Jerome Junction giving way to open desert, Katherine allowed herself to cry. She cried for the years she had lost to Harold's cruelty, for the woman she had been before he broke her, for the life she might have had if she had been stronger or smarter or luckier. But she also cried with relief and hope because she was free, truly free for the first time in 4 years. And somewhere behind her was a good man who cared for her, waiting for the day when she would be ready to be cared for again. The journey to California took 3 days, with stops and transfers and long stretches of watching the landscape change from Arizona desert to California valleys. Katherine spent the time sleeping fitfully, eating sparingly to conserve her money, and trying not to think about what Harold must have done when he came home and found her gone. She had left a note, short and simple. "I am leaving. Do not try to find me. Katherine." She owed him no more explanation than that. No justification for wanting to escape his abuse. Let him rage and break things and curse her name. She would be hundreds of miles away, beyond his reach. When the train finally pulled into San Francisco, Katherine was exhausted, her hip aching from days of sitting, her nerves frayed from constant vigilance. But she was also filled with a strange lightness, the feeling of chains falling away after being worn so long she had forgotten what freedom felt like. She found her cousin Lily's address in the directory at the station and paid for a cab to take her there, watching the city roll past with wide eyes. San Francisco was nothing like Jerome Junction, all hills and ocean views and buildings crowded together. It was loud and busy and overwhelming, but also anonymous in a way that felt safe. Harold would never find her here. Even if he tried, she would be one person among thousands, invisible and unreachable. Lily's building was a modest 3-story structure in a respectable neighborhood. Katherine climbed the stairs slowly, her heart hammering, and knocked on the door marked 3B. A woman opened it, tall and blonde with Lily's blue eyes, though her face had matured from the last time Katherine had seen her 8 years ago. Recognition dawned, followed immediately by concern. "Katherine? My God, is that you?" "Hello, Lily." Katherine's voice shook. "You said once that if I ever needed help, your door was open. I am sorry to arrive unannounced, but I did not know where else to go." Come in right now." Lily pulled her inside, taking her bag and closing the door firmly behind them. "You look half dead. When did you last eat? Sit down before you fall down." The kindness in her cousin's voice broke something in Katherine, and she found herself sobbing as Lily wrapped her in a fierce hug. The whole story came pouring out: Harold's abuse, Preston's kindness, the desperate flight west. Lily listened without interrupting, her face growing progressively more furious. "That monster," she said when Katherine finally fell silent. "I am so glad you got away from him. You are staying here with me for as long as you need. I have an extra room, and I work as a secretary at a law office. My boss is always looking for someone to help with filing and correspondence. I can get you work if you want it." "I want it," Katherine said immediately. "I need to support myself, need to pay my own way. I will not be dependent on a man ever again." "Good." Lily squeezed her hand. "You are safe now, cousin. I promise you that. And we will figure out the rest together." Over the next few weeks, Katherine settled into her new life with a mixture of relief and disorientation. Lily was as good as her word, securing Katherine a position at the law office of Morrison and Webb, where she spent her days organizing files, drafting correspondence, and learning the basics of legal work. The job paid enough for her to contribute to household expenses and slowly rebuild her savings. She sent Preston a telegram her first week in San Francisco. "Arrived safely, starting new position. Thank you for everything." K. His response came the same day. "Glad you are well. Thinking of you." P. After that, they exchanged telegrams once a week, brief messages that somehow said everything that mattered. Preston told her about life at the ranch, about a new horse he was training, about how Jerome Junction felt emptier without her in it. Katherine told him about San Francisco, about her work, about slowly learning to live without fear. She did not tell him that she thought about him constantly, that she went to sleep every night imagining what it would be like when they finally saw each other again. That felt too vulnerable, too raw to put into words over a telegraph wire. 2 months after her arrival in California, Katherine received a different kind of telegram. "Harold filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment. Thought you should know. Preston." Katherine stared at the words, her heart racing. Divorce. It would mark her as a fallen woman, would close certain doors in society, but it would also mean she was truly free, legally and permanently released from the man who had tormented her. She sent back, "Let him. I want nothing from him. K." The divorce proceedings happened without her, Harold claiming abandonment and painting himself as the wrong party. Katherine did not care. Let him tell whatever lies he wanted to the people of Jerome Junction. She had the truth, and more importantly, she had her freedom. Spring came to San Francisco with flowers blooming in window boxes and mild temperatures that made the city feel reborn. Katherine had been in California for 6 months, had saved enough money to think about getting her own small apartment, had made friends at work, and started to remember what it felt like to laugh without fear. And still she thought about Preston Cole, wondered if the feelings that had sparked between them in those stolen moments in Arizona had been real or just the product of desperation and circumstance. Then one Saturday in April, there was a knock on Lily's apartment door. Katherine answered it, expecting one of Lily's friends, and found herself face to face with green eyes and a familiar warm smile. "Preston?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "What are you doing here? You said to come when you were ready to hear from me." He held his hat in his hands, looking nervous in a way she had never seen him. "I figured 6 months was long enough to let you settle in, but if I am wrong, if you need more time, I can go. I just had to see you, had to know you were really all right." Katherine could not speak past the lump in her throat, so she did the only thing that made sense. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, felt him drop his hat so he could hold her properly, and let herself cry tears of joy against his shoulder. "I have missed you," she managed finally. "Every single day I have missed you." "I have missed you too." Preston pulled back enough to look at her face, his hands gentle on her cheeks. "You look good, Katherine. Healthy, happy." "I am happy. Happier than I have been in years." She smiled up at him. "Come inside. I want you to meet my cousin, and then I want to hear everything about how you got here and how long you can stay." Preston stayed 2 weeks, taking a room at a boarding house a few blocks from Lily's apartment. He and Katherine spent every moment they could together, walking through Golden Gate Park, visiting the wharves, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Lily cheerfully made herself scarce, clearly delighted that her cousin had found someone who treated her with such obvious devotion. It was on Preston's last night in San Francisco that everything changed. They were walking along the waterfront at sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, and Katherine realized she did not want him to leave, could not stand the thought of going back to telegrams and letters when they could have so much more. "Preston," she said, stopping and turning to face him. "When you go back to Arizona, I am going with you." He blinked in surprise. "What? Katherine, you have built a life here. You have work, friends, safety. I cannot ask you to give that up." "You are not asking, I am offering." She took his hands in hers. "I ran to California because I needed distance and anonymity to heal. And I have healed, at least enough to know what I want now. And what I want is to be wherever you are." "Are you sure? Jerome Junction has not exactly been kind to you." "Jerome Junction is where I met the man I love," Katherine said softly, watching his eyes widen at her words. "And yes, I love you, Preston Cole. I think I have loved you since the day you asked why I was limping and actually cared about the answer. So if you will have me, if you still want to court me properly and see where this goes, then I want to go back to Arizona with you." Preston was quiet for a long moment, and Katherine's heart started to sink, wondering if she had misread everything, if she had been foolish to assume his feelings matched hers. But then he was cupping her face in his hands, his eyes bright with emotion. "Katherine Andrews, I have been in love with you since the moment you looked at me outside that mercantile and tried to convince me you were fine when you so clearly were not. You are the bravest, strongest, most incredible woman I have ever met. And if you will give me the honor, I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what love is supposed to look like." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Katherine felt the last broken pieces of her heart start to mend. This was what she had been looking for all along, not grand gestures or passionate declarations, but simple, steady devotion from someone who saw her as an equal, as a partner, as someone worth cherishing. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling like fools. "So we are doing this?" Preston asked. "You are really coming back with me?" "I am really coming back with you," Katherine confirmed. "Though not to Jerome Junction, if we can help it. Somewhere new, where we can start fresh." "I have been saving again," Preston said, "and I heard about a ranch for sale up near Flagstaff. It is small, needs work, but it has good water rights and decent grazing land. I was thinking maybe I could buy it, build it up into something real." "We could buy it," Katherine corrected. "I have savings too. We could be partners, 50-50. Preston's smile was incandescent. "Partners. I like the sound of that, though I am hoping we will be more than just business partners before too long." "Ask me properly once my divorce is finalized," Katherine said. "But yes, Preston Cole. When you ask, my answer will be yes." They returned to Arizona 3 weeks later, after Katherine had given notice at work, said tearful goodbyes to Lily and her new friends, and packed up her modest belongings. The journey east felt completely different from her desperate flight west, filled with excitement and possibility instead of fear. They got off the train in Flagstaff rather than Jerome Junction, and Preston showed her the ranch he had scouted, 160 acres of grassland, with a small house that needed repairs and corrals that needed rebuilding. To Katherine, it looked like paradise, a blank canvas where they could paint whatever future they wanted. "It needs a lot of work," Preston said, walking her around the property. "But I think we could make something special here. Run cattle, maybe some horses, build a life." "It is perfect," Katherine said, meaning it. "When can we buy it?" They signed the papers a week later, becoming joint owners of what they decided to call the Cole Andrews Ranch. Katherine insisted on keeping her maiden name, wanting to shed every trace of Harold Ashford, and Preston supported her completely. The divorce was finalized in June, Harold having pushed it through quickly so he could paint himself as the victim and possibly find a new wife to torment. Katherine did not care. She signed the papers when they arrived, officially severing the last tie to her old life. Preston proposed that same day, kneeling in the half-finished kitchen of their ranch house with a simple gold band he had bought in town. "I know we have only known each other for a year," he said, "but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Catherine Andrews, will you marry me? Will you build this life with me, as my partner and my wife and the love of my life?" "Yes," Catherine said, pulling him up so she could kiss him. "Yes to all of it. Yes to everything." They married in August in a simple ceremony in Flagstaff, with Lily traveling all the way from San Francisco to stand as Catherine's witness and one of Preston's friends from the Rocking M standing for him. Catherine wore a dress of pale yellow, her hair pinned up with wildflowers, and when Preston slipped the ring on her finger, she felt the last shadow of Harold Ashford lift from her soul. She was Katherine Cole now, wife to a good man, co-owner of a ranch that was slowly but surely becoming successful, and happier than she had ever imagined possible. Their first year of marriage was filled with hard work and simple joys. They repaired the house room by room, fixed fences and corrals, bought their first small herd of cattle. Money was tight, but they were building something real together, something that belonged to them equally. Preston proved to be everything Catherine had hoped, and more. He was patient with her healing hip, never complaining when she needed to rest or move slowly. He was affectionate without being demanding, giving her space to rediscover physical intimacy at her own pace after years of Harold's cruelty. And he was her true partner, asking her opinion on every decision about the ranch, respecting her judgment, treating her as an equal in every way. Catherine found herself blooming under his care like a plant finally given proper water and sunlight. She laughed more, smiled more, felt her body slowly healing from the damage Harold had done. Her limp never went away completely, but it bothered her less when she was not constantly tensed against the next blow. In their second spring on the ranch, Catherine realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had never wanted children with Harold, had been grateful her body had not conceived during their marriage. But a child with Preston felt like a gift, a new beginning, a chance to create a family filled with love instead of fear. She told him one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in brilliant colors. "Preston, I have news. We are going to have a baby." Preston went very still, and for a moment, Catherine worried he was not happy about it. Then he turned to her with tears in his eyes and gathered her into his arms, careful as always not to jar her hip. "A baby," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby. Catherine, I could not be happier. You are not worried about the expense or how we will manage with the ranch. We will figure it out together, same as we figure out everything else." He pulled back to look at her face. "You are going to be an amazing mother, and I am going to do everything in my power to be a good father, the kind of father I wished I had growing up." Their son was born in November of 1885, a healthy boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's determination. They named him Thomas, after Preston's father, who had died when Preston was young, and from the moment Catherine held him, she felt a fierce protective love she had not known she was capable of. Preston was completely besotted with his son, getting up for night feedings without complaint, walking Thomas around when he was fussy, staring at him with wonder like he could not quite believe this perfect little human was real. Watching her husband with their child made Catherine fall in love with him all over again. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Preston's skill with horses became well known in the area, and they started training mounts for other ranchers, adding to their income from cattle. Catherine managed their finances and correspondence, proving to have a good head for business that complemented Preston's practical skills. When Thomas was 2, Catherine found herself pregnant again. This time, a daughter arrived, with dark hair and her father's smile. They named her Ruth, after Catherine's mother, and their family felt complete. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew healthy and happy, running wild on the ranch under their parents' watchful eyes. Preston taught Thomas to ride almost before he could walk, and Catherine read Ruth stories every night, instilling in her daughter a love of learning. They worked hard, saved carefully, and slowly but surely built the Cole Andrews Ranch into one of the most respected properties in the area. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Catherine would think about how different her life could have been if Preston had not found her limping outside that mercantile, if she had not found the courage to leave Harold, if she had stayed trapped in that cycle of violence and despair. The thought made her shudder, made her pull her children close, and thank God for the chain of events that had led her here. One evening when Thomas was 7 and Ruth was 5, the family sat around their dinner table, and Preston asked the children to share their favorite part of the day. It was a ritual they had started when Thomas began talking, a way to celebrate the small joys of daily life. "I helped Papa fix the fence in the north pasture," Thomas said proudly, "and I only hit my thumb with the hammer once." "Only once is pretty good," Preston said with a grin, ruffling his son's hair. "I picked flowers for Mama," Ruth added, "and she put them in a vase and said they were beautiful." "They were beautiful, sweetheart," Katherine confirmed, smiling at her daughter. "What about you, Mama?" Ruth asked. "What was your favorite part?" Katherine looked around the table at her family, at the home they had built together, at the life that had seemed impossible just a few years ago. "My favorite part was right now," she said softly. "Having dinner with the people I love most in the world." Preston caught her eye and smiled, and in that smile Katherine saw everything they had been through together, all the pain and healing and growth. She saw the past they had survived and the future they were building, one day at a time. After dinner, Preston helped her wash dishes while the children played in the next room. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Only twice," Katherine said, leaning back against him. "I suppose I could stand to hear it one more time. I love you, Katherine Cole. I loved you when you were broken and hurting, and I love you now that you are healed and whole. I will love you until the day I die, and probably beyond that too." Katherine turned in his arms, her hip giving its usual twinge but no longer causing the shooting pain it once had. She had learned to live with the limp, had made peace with the permanent reminder of what Harold had done to her. Some scars did not fully fade, and that was all right. They were part of her story, part of what made her strong. "I love you too," she said, reaching up to kiss him. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for asking why I was limping. Thank you for caring enough to help me escape. Thank you for being brave enough to leave," Preston countered. "For trusting me when you had every reason not to trust any man. For building this life with me." They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other while their children laughed in the next room. And Katherine thought about the girl she had been 6 years ago, convinced she was trapped forever in a nightmare marriage. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, that there was a good man waiting who would love her properly, who would show her what partnership really meant, would she have believed it? Probably not. But it had happened anyway, against all odds, and that made it all the more precious. The years continued to roll by, marked by birthdays and holidays, by good harvests and lean times, by the steady accumulation of a life well lived. Thomas grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Ruth developed a passion for books and teaching, eventually going to the territorial school in Flagstaff and coming back to start a small school on their property for children from surrounding ranches. Katherine's hip never fully healed, but it bothered her less as she grew older, or perhaps she just became better at working around it. She continued to manage the business side of the ranch, proving herself shrewd at negotiations and careful with finances. By the time they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, the Cole Andrews Ranch was one of the most successful operations in northern Arizona. They never saw or heard from Harold Ashford again. Katherine occasionally wondered what had become of him, if he had found another woman to torment, or if he had drunk himself to death in some saloon. But mostly she did not think about him at all. He was a ghost from another life, powerless to hurt her anymore. Preston's hair went silver at the temples, making him look distinguished, and Katherine's face gained lines that marked years of laughter rather than fear. They grew old together the way couples are supposed to, comfortable and companionable, still occasionally surprising each other with small gestures of love. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Preston took Katherine into Flagstaff and bought her a beautiful shawl she had been admiring in a shop window. That night, as they sat on their porch under a sky full of stars, he wrapped it around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Do you remember the day I found you outside that mercantile?" he asked. "You looked so scared and hurt, trying so hard to be strong. I remember thinking you were the kindest man I had ever met," Katherine said, "and being terrified of that kindness because I did not know what to do with it. I fell in love with you that day, I think, or maybe the day after, when you told me about your leg and I realized what you had survived. All I knew was that I wanted to protect you, wanted to show you what you deserved. You did show me." Katherine took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You showed me every single day for 25 years, and I hope you keep showing me for another 25 more." "That is the plan," Preston agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Though I might need you to keep reminding me when I get old and forgetful." "You are not old," says the woman with silver in her hair. "Respectfully earned silver," Katherine corrected primly, making him laugh. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and Katherine thought about the strange, winding path that had brought her here. From a miserable marriage in Jerome Junction to a desperate flight west to finding her way back to Arizona and the man who had saved her in more ways than one. It had not been easy. There had been setbacks and struggles, moments when she wondered if she had made the right choice. But looking back now, with a quarter-century of happy marriage behind her, and hopefully many more years ahead, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that every difficult moment had been worth it. She had learned that love was not supposed to hurt, that partnership meant equality and respect, that she was worthy of kindness and care. Preston had taught her those lessons patiently, day by day, until she finally believed them in her bones. And in teaching her to love herself, he had given her the greatest gift possible, the ability to love him back fully and without fear. Their children gave them grandchildren eventually, 5 in total, and the ranch house filled with the sound of young voices again. Katherine loved being a grandmother, spoiling the little ones, and telling them stories about the old days. She never told them about Harold, about the stairs, or the broken hip, or the years of abuse. That was not a story for children. Instead, she told them about how their grandfather had been a cowboy who helped a lady in distress, and how that one act of kindness had changed 2 lives forever. Preston continued to work the ranch well into his 60s, though he let Thomas take over more of the heavy labor. He still trained horses, still rode the property lines, still loved the life they had built together. Katherine's limp became more pronounced as arthritis set in, but she refused to slow down, keeping the books and managing supplies and making sure everyone was fed. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house and spilled out onto the porch, everyone laughing and talking and celebrating the love story that had brought them all into existence. After dinner, Preston stood and clinked his glass for attention. "I want to say something," he announced, waiting until everyone quieted down. 40 years ago, I met a woman who was limping down the street in Jerome Junction, and I asked her what was wrong. She could have told me to mind my own business. She could have sent me away, but she did not. She trusted me, just a little bit, and that trust changed my entire life. He turned to Katherine, his green eyes as warm and loving as they had been 4 decades earlier. "Katherine, you are the strongest, bravest person I know. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you came out the other side with your kindness and your hope intact. You have given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You have given me children and grandchildren, a home, a purpose. You have given me love, real and true and lasting. And I want everyone here to know that meeting you, helping you, loving you, has been the greatest honor and joy of my life." There was not a dry eye in the house by the time he finished. Katherine stood and hugged him fiercely, feeling the same rush of love and gratitude she had felt on their wedding day, multiplied by 40 years of shared experience. "You saved me," she whispered against his shoulder. "In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Preston corrected gently. "You gave my life meaning, gave me someone to build a future for. I was just a drifting cowboy before I met you. You made me a husband, a father, a better man." They held each other while their family applauded and cheered, and Katherine thought about that scared, broken woman who had been pushed down the stairs by a cruel husband. She thought about how Preston had found her limping and asked why, really asked, not letting her brush it off or hide behind polite lies. That question, that simple expression of concern from a stranger, had set everything in motion. It had given her hope when she thought hope was dead. It had shown her that not all men were like Harold, that kindness and gentleness still existed in the world, and from that single moment of connection, an entire life had grown. A marriage, a family, a legacy of love that would continue long after both she and Preston were gone. Their grandchildren would have children, and those children would have children, and all of them would carry forward the lesson that love was supposed to be gentle. That partnership meant equality, that people were meant to lift each other up rather than tear each other down. As the party continued around them, Katherine and Preston slipped out to their porch, seeking a moment of quiet together. The sun was setting over their land, painting the sky in those brilliant Arizona colors that never got old, no matter how many times you saw them. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had not met that day?" Katherine asked, leaning against her husband's solid warmth. Every single day, Preston admitted. And every single day I am grateful for whatever twist of fate put you on that street at that moment. I was just coming into town to pick up supplies. I could have gone the day before or the day after. But I went that day, and there you were, and my whole life changed. Mine too. Katherine smiled up at him. For the better. For the better, he agreed, kissing her softly. They stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of pain and fear. They had been given a second chance at life, at love, at happiness, and they had seized it with both hands and never let go. Behind them, through the windows of their home, they could hear their family laughing and talking, celebrating 40 years of marriage that had started with a simple question, asked by a cowboy to a woman limping down a street. It was an ordinary moment that had become extraordinary, proving that sometimes salvation came not with grand gestures, but with small kindnesses, with someone caring enough to ask why you were hurting and then staying to help you heal. Katherine took Preston's hand, feeling the calluses earned from decades of hard work, and squeezed gently. He squeezed back, and no other words were needed. They had said it all already, over and over, in 40 years of partnership and devotion and love. The future stretched ahead of them, however many years they had left, and it was bright with possibility. There would be more grandchildren, maybe even great-grandchildren. There would be more sunsets on this porch, more quiet moments of connection, more days of working side by side on the ranch they had built together. And through it all, there would be love, the steady, enduring kind of love that had sustained them through everything, that had turned a chance meeting outside a mercantile into a lifetime of happiness. The kind of love that everyone deserved, but not everyone found. Katherine had found it, against all odds, and she would be grateful for that gift every day for the rest of her life. She had been broken and lost and afraid, and Preston Cole had found her limping and asked why, and everything had changed. It was, she thought, looking up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, the most beautiful love story she could have ever imagined. And the best part was that it was all true, every moment of it, from the painful beginning to this perfect present to whatever future lay ahead. They had survived. They had healed. They had loved and been loved in return. And in the end, that was all that really mattered.